Hello all and welcome back to Hyp3rblue Reviews. Today's review is going to cover a walking simulator done right. Well, of sorts anyway. Today's review is on The Park. The Park is a first-person horror game that I'm shoehorning into the walking sim genre. It was developed and published by Funcom. The Park was originally released for the PC in 2015. It was released for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in 2016, and it was released for the Switch in 2019. Not to get too off topic, but I had no idea this game made it to the Switch. I'll need to download that as soon as I'm done with this review. Now that I'm done spoiling my rating, I'm not sure if there's any differences between any of the versions. Regardless, today's review is going to focus on the PlayStation 4 version. Let's get started. The Park is a psychological horror game that follows Lorraine as she attempts to locate her lost son within the Atlantic Island Park. So I'm getting a bit ahead of the story, but only a bit. You see, the game starts when the park is on the verge of closing for the day. Lorraine attempts to get tickets for herself and her son Callum. As she is turned away, she realizes that Callum has left the car and entered the park. This sparks a strong emotional response from Lorraine, as it should, and she rushes into the park to find Callum. That's right, despite being turned away just moments ago, Lorraine is now able to walk past the man at the kiosk and enter the park. The psychological horror aspects begin pretty much as soon as Lorraine enters the park. The mood changes abruptly as the park changes from your average happy theme park to appearing as if it were abandoned for years. Lorraine hears Callum in the distance, but she can never seem to catch up no matter how much she calls out to him. Fun side note, if you enjoyed pressing X to Jason in Heavy Rain, then you may enjoy pushing circle to Callum in this game.
Callum, stay where you are!
Despite the park appearing abandoned and run down, the rides are still operational. Players have the opportunity to ride on these rides. Some rides give players backstory to the event of Lorraine's past, like the fact that her husband died, and others provide other exposition for what's going on. There's also a retelling of Hansel and Gretel for the players to be bored by. No, actually I think that's the best way to describe that part. In any case, players also get a chance to see visions of the park's mascot, Chad the Chipmunk, as well as a scary-looking park attendant known as the Boogeyman. These creatures don't really interact with the players too much though, and typically are only there to serve as scares. Of course, there are times when that statement isn't true. While the Boogeyman doesn't interact with players as they explore the park, aside from blocking areas players aren't supposed to be in, it does approach Lorraine when she rides the roller coaster. The Boogeyman is the one that adds exposition and tells Lorraine that the witch has her and Callum, and there won't be a happy ending to this story. Way to spoil the game there, jerk. There's also more backstory given to the player as they explore the park. Finding notes or certain items causes Lorraine to start talking to herself as she wanders the park. She discusses topics such as how much she hates being a mother, how she feels like she's a bad mother, which kind of conflicts and or validates the previous statement. She's also worried that something is happening to Callum, and we get some background on the park itself. Apparently, the ownership of the park has changed several times over time. The game explains that one of the park's owners, Mr. Winter, wanted to harvest positive emotions of the park's guests. This energy would be used for him to obtain immortality. Somehow. Of course, as the owner harvests the positive energy, it leaves the employees with negative emotions. The workers begin to lash out at customers, and the person playing Chad the Chipmunk murdered a teenager with an ice pick. Despite the murder, the park remained open until several children disappeared inside of the House of Horrors attraction. Speaking of, The House of Horrors is my favorite part of the game. The front of the attraction is a giant white witch's face. Could this be where the white witch that the boogeyman mentions lives? Well, not to spoil things, but maybe. The House of Horrors has the perfect ambiance and a ton of jump scares. Now, I hate jump scares, but they're fantastic here. It's the type that you'd actually expect to see in a haunted house, and they're superb. The Hansel and Gretel story actually comes back into play within the House of Horrors, as Lorraine reminisces how the original tale was about the mother and the witch being one and the same. This draws parallels to how she feels neglectful and responsible for Callum's disappearance. The House of Horrors also adds more background to Mr. Winter. Apparently Mr. Winter hid in the House of Horrors after the park was shut down. He continued his experiments, for lack of better terms, and even killed one child in order to achieve his dream of immortality. The game eventually becomes PT as Lorraine explores deeper and deeper in the House of Horrors. Eventually, players go through Lorraine's house over and over as more details about her life are revealed. Also, the house becomes more and more decrepit as you move on too. I won't reveal what comes of all this information, but I will say you should check it out. That was a lot to unpack there. You know, it's really funny how this type of thing works. The runtime for this game is roughly 2 hours, and that's a lot of story for a short game. See Deliriant? That's how you do it. I don't have much to say about the gameplay aspect for the park though. It's basically a walking simulator, and it controls well enough, so no issues there. The park is a fairly straightforward game, and it creates a spooky atmosphere that is very well done. Players can get as invested as they want in it with all the notes and the rides that you can find. I mentioned already that a majority of the scares are jump scares, but they're normally well scouted, so they aren't too bad. The House of Horrors has a majority of these pop scares, and as I said, they're superb. There's one jump scare that actually genuinely got me, involving Chad. I won't spoil when it happens because it's really well done. The theme park within the game is actually pretty small overall, but it feels rather big when you're playing the game. The idea to break up the tedium of walking around looking for things with the park rides was a nice touch and very welcome. Especially since this helps provide exposition and sets the mood of the game. And that even includes the very long Hansel and Gretel story that's told through the tunnel water ride. Even though the theme park is small, it's actually still pretty easy to get lost when wandering around. The developers provided a small map that shows where players are, and that's super useful in situations where players get lost. Apparently, the park is a spin-off of another Funcom game called The Secret World. The Secret World is an MMORPG, and it's incredibly easy to see how these are related. I mean, obviously. No, seriously, The Secret World is an MMO, and it apparently had several spin-offs that featured characters from the game. There's also a holiday-themed mission within the Secret World game that continues the story of the park, but I'm not entirely sure what it continues exactly, although a quick Google search will spoil both the ending of the mission as well as the ending to the park, so read it if you don't care about spoilers, I guess. The Boogeyman character from the park gets some backstory by the end of the game as well. I won't spoil it, but it's really cool that there's just enough information / things for players to find to figure it out. I honestly love things like that in games. All in all, I found the park to be very enjoyable. It isn't just walking around and picking things up to make it to the next part like a lot of other first-person games or walking sims. There are tons of things to interact with and make the character do. I don't recall being able to ride on theme park rides in games like Ether 1 or Gone Home, so that puts the park slightly above those in my opinion. To be fair though, I'm not sure if I would classify this as a walking sim game, but the elements are there. You do actually see the main character Lorraine at certain points of the game, so I don't know, I feel like that kind of takes it out of the walking sim genre. Regardless of all that, I give the park 5 Chad the Chipmunks out of 5, and I also say I highly recommend this game. I hope you enjoyed this month's review. As always, thank you for watching.